is a special blessing from God. It reminds us that God loves us so much to abandon us, when we separate from Him. So it's a time to fellowship with our Creator. It's a time to sit down and recount God's blessings in our life. So by keeping the Sabbath, we manifest our allegiance, we manifest our loyalty to God. Now, failure to do so is insubordination. Does that make sense? Failure to do so means we are no longer in agreement with God. Remember, like a country, we have a sovereignty. Anytime we decide we no longer want to keep to the rule of the country, either we are committing treason, or it's insubordination, or we are acting against the rule of law, and that would be criminal offense. Is that not so? That's it. So when we no longer recognize Sabbath, and unquestionably Saturday, as a day of worship, then we see ourselves at loggerheads with God. Again, the Sabbath reminds us about the time of the end, because the book of Revelation describes different powers, that Satan used to deceive the world about the Sabbath. Because when you read the book of Revelation 12, 13, and 14, everything is about worship. It's about worship. So there was a time, we all know the story, where there were powers who tried to contend with God in changing the time, in changing the days, in changing how God has asked us to worship. But in the final moment, there will be a time where we humans will be forced to worship something. And it could be an image. Daniel and his friends, they faced it. But a time will come when there will be a law that will be propounded to prevent us from worshiping the way we ought to, or from even buying and selling, even on a particular day. So the Sabbath reminds us of what is going to happen at the time of the end, and prepares us as a people, and then gives us ways to overcome when that time comes. And this, the lesson as identified as the mark of the beast. I think we are going to study that in depth next week. It is a symbol that tells us about those who will accept the Sunday instituted worship, by man, as a day of worship instead of the Sabbath that was instituted by God. And according to the lesson, according to the Bible, the Sabbath is the only day that God hallowed, He sanctified, He set it apart. There is no other day that have all these attributes apart from the Sabbath, and which invariably falls on a Saturday. The last part of the lesson, if I throw the floor for contribution, is the law, the Sabbath, and worship. And then this brings us back to the threefold message of Revelation chapter 14 that is proclaimed during the time of the end and is linked to worship and therefore to the Sabbath and the law of God. Because in the law of God, there is Sabbath. And Sabbath is all about we worshiping God. I don't know if you get the synoptic link I'm trying to claim. Great. So you cannot separate law from worship, and you cannot separate worship from the Sabbath. They all link together. So now in Revelation chapter 14, the first angel's message between verses 6 and 7 warns us about the preparation for judgment. And it tells us about whose standard is the law. And it reminds us to worship the Creator just as the Sabbath reminds us. Now, the second message in verses 8 warns us about false religion. As outrightly said, turn away from Babylon. Anything false religion, run from it. Because the lies is epidemic in nature. It spreads like wildfire, and a lot of people will follow it thinking it is true. Therefore, decide who and how to worship. Very important. Decide, just like Joshua was asking the children of Israel, decide this day who you worship. If it is Paul, follow him. If it is Bar, do what? Follow him. So the second angel's message reminds us about the decision of who to worship and how to worship. If you are worshiping God, it means you have Sabbath. If you are worshiping something else, man's instituted doctrine, it means we are accepting the mark of the beast. And lastly, the third angel's message in verses 9 to 11 of Revelation 14 is that